lot today about ransomware. What other security threats are there? Bill, do you face any others, your customers?
Just the typical cast of characters, right? You've got the antivirus or the viruses that are out there, but primarily today the biggest threat is ransomware, stealing the data. And just to piggyback off of one of the questions, but I think you said before, is we find that a lot of companies aren't reporting to the FBI or any of the other services, government agencies, etc., is because the fines that they will face from a compliance standpoint far outweigh the $2,000, $5,000, or $17,000. So if it gets out, the hospital will end up having, I know of a hospital that had to pay $300,000 and they paid $15,000 in Bitcoins. And it got out. They were trying to keep it, under the rug. We've got a client who is a manufacturer, and in order for them to be able to do business with a contract that they were awarded from Walmart, they had to be able to show that they have a backup disaster recovery solution and unified threat management just to get the contract. So it's the other threat is the fines and being able to do business with public entities, especially if you're a private entity. So that's another thing to consider.
No question. I've seen a lot of RFPs that ask all the security questions now, and I get calls, do you have a security policy I can send these people, okay? No.
I think that just to say, there's one thing that we've definitely learned in these couple of years where this has become an epidemic, and it is about business continuity. It's about how quickly these companies can recover from these type of attacks. It's essential. Most of these small businesses that we saw, if they're down for 2 days, 90% of them go out of business in a year. So 2 days is a very kind of short time to try to recover from traditional tape backup or traditional file-based backup. You need to really be able to educate them on what the cost of downtime is and how much downtime they can afford. And that becomes almost like an insurance policy, because now you're going to them with this insurance play to say we can protect you, and relative value is quite significant.
Brooks, would you recommend paying the ransom when you get hit?
It's complicated. If you have Datto, you don't have to pay the ransom, obviously. But it's just true. I mean, it's one of the best things about my job, and I've been in this industry for 30 years. Our partners feel like heroes when they recover in these situations, because these are desperate times. They have to get Bitcoins. Most people don't have a Bitcoin account, right? They have to go figure out how to get Bitcoins. They got to deal with somebody that's in Eastern Europe somewhere, that's in Russia, that's questionable at best, and they're worried about what they built over years and years and years going down the tube so quickly. So being able to recover is important. Now, if there's some reason you don't have that backup, you may be in a situation where it could be weeks to recover and potentially tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. They're very sophisticated. They know exactly the willingness to pay of who they've targeted. So they'll go to individuals by certain zip codes based on net worth in those zip codes, and they'll toggle these to individuals. They'll know a hospital might pay more than a veterinary clinic, for example. They know, they're very sophisticated, and so they set that bar where it's almost like, okay, I'll pay the $14,000 instead of get the PR disaster that's going to come, right?
Oh, it's a tremendous PR. Does Datto provide insurance if someone gets ransomed and you're monitoring the system?
I'll talk about insurance more broadly first, to say this is an emerging industry because of what's happening. So there are some insurance players coming up because they know it's becoming very positive. We back all of our partners who have us, so we're back to back, as any of them will tell you, to make sure that our partners aren't held liable if there's an issue with Datto.
That's good. What are you putting in HP products to make sure that these things don't happen? How secure are your products?
Well, they're the most secure printing products, as you saw from our slogan.
I think some people just said theirs were too, but go ahead.
Yeah, so just to build on what I said at the beginning, we are trying to build multiple layers of defense. And a great analogy that I heard just the other day was, I'll give full credit to Jeff Malik from Microsoft, but he really likened it to medieval defenses. So the earlier walled cities, they typically focused on just the wall itself, and they tried to make the wall as impenetrable as possible. It's very analogous to where we were a few years ago with firewalls. The firewall was built to protect you. And then we realized over time, and the medieval city wall builders realized that if you have this impenetrable firewall around the outside of your city, once someone does get through, then they have free reign to do whatever kind of damage they want inside the city. And so the evolution of walled cities was, like Carcassonne, for example, has multiple walls. They've offset the doors so that if you battering ram through the outer wall, you can't get your battering ram. There's not enough room to maneuver it to get in the inner wall. And then inside the city are castles and other areas of defense. And so it's really a lot of what's happened. I think it's a great analogy for where we are in building security. And you have the BIOS protection that Dave talked about. You have whitelisting so that malware can't actually run in your system. You have memory detection, real-time intrusion detection is what we call it. Detects any anomalous things happening in memory. And then you have management layer, management software that continuously monitors your system to make sure that any settings that you want in place remain in place. As Dave had in his slide, 65% of the breaches are due to employee error, not something malicious. So someone may accidentally change a setting, not with any malicious intent, but you want to have software in place that gets it back into place.
Can these machines be monitored remotely, and can they be updated remotely?
Yeah, great point. I think this is not true of only HP. I think all vendors are constantly updating their firmware to address new threats, deprecate encryption algorithms that are no longer secure. And so one of the best defenses is to make sure your firmware is up to date. And in the case of our devices, the whitelisting and the runtime intrusion detection are both available via firmware updates. So there's a couple of examples of things you can get with the firmware upgrades.
Does that go through the customer server, or is it separate from the server, or is that an avenue for possible penetration?
The firmware upgrade?
Yep.
So the firmware upgrade, the one that we're building into Smart Device Services, actually is triggered through the tool that you might already be using, like Forza or another ERP system.
There are no others.
Okay. Thank you. And then it's triggered that way, but then it goes directly to HP's cloud to check to see, is there any firmware that's newer than the firmware already running on the device? So it does that check. And if there is something newer, it'll present you with, here's all the versions of firmware that are newer, and you can pick the one you want. You can pick the most recent, or you can pick some other one. That comes directly from HP.com servers.
Super. Now, John, you buy all these machines, you put them in an end user site. What do you add on top of that to make them even more secure and make sure that they're not penetrable?
Yeah, so for us, it's a layered approach. We use multiple endpoint, AV, and other sensing softwares that look for changes made to the OS and or the programs. And then from a user standpoint, we've got plugins in the browsers that'll actually go out and do reputation checks. So I hit a Google search and type in a given word, and the returns come back, and I'll get some reputation check marks that come up in front of the links. We're also stripping out all attachments for inbound emails, and we use Mimecast for that, and actually reformats those as a PDF, thereby attempting to guarantee that there's no payload included. But the user has the right to request that, because sometimes the PDF formatting doesn't look as clean as the original. And if they were expecting that document to come through from a vendor or a partner, they can go ahead and request that. But for us, it's layer upon layer upon layer, and then lots of backups and lots of training. We use KnowBe4 as well. We had hoped that our first internal test for ourselves would come back with less than 20%. We were a bit over.
We had the
only
same
a couple of points. It actually measures who opened the email, who clicked on the link in the email, and then this was a spoof to reset your AD credentials on the enterprise, and it measured who actually entered their username and password. And we look at that as an opportunity to focus on training. KnowBe4 is a great product for that. They've got a lot of videos. We kind of tier it with those higher risk people, but you also have to keep in mind that testing has to be ongoing and regular, because half my sales reps didn't even see the email. That's just how they're wired. If it wasn't a customer that the subject was contract attached, it's just right over their head.
So beyond KnowBe4, you found other products that you found helpful and successful in your operations?
So for me?
Yeah.
Yeah. We also looked at PhishMe. which was another product, but no before, we think it's a better opportunity,
Right
a
up
better
there.
product, and we market, you know, the stuff we use internally, we also market it to our clients, so.
I gotta tell you that Google's doc email that went out last week, I had 3 of them by 9 o'clock in the morning, and those looked awful authentic to me, I gotta tell you. They had my client name, they had my contact name, they had a Google Doc, click on here, they want you to review it. Now, that wasn't the 7th time I breached our system, but Henry talked about the lawyer 6 times gang, okay. It wasn't me. How are you selling this, Chip?
Well, you would do an internal backup, which automatically backs up to the cloud. So if something does go wrong, that affects the current desktops that they have, we're able to switch over to our backup, and that will take over, so they really don't lose any time. And then it's backed up to the cloud. So if we have a complete disaster, we have the cloud backup there to pull from and get them rolling within a couple of hours.
Were you able to determine how the ransomware got into your system?
Yeah, we have software that automatically tells us when it happens. In fact, we have a customer that has like 50 devices, and somebody opened up one of those great emails, and we caught it right away, had the computer taken off the network, so it didn't affect anything else. So, yeah, there are devices out there to do that, and if you're monitoring your customers regularly, you can stop it pretty quick.